The alarm cut through the quiet hum of Sentinel Prime's control room like a knife. Commander Daeho Kim looked up from his reports, his eyes immediately finding the main display screen. Something was wrong. In 15 years of service along the Vrin Empire's border, he had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, every nerve in his body was screaming at him. "Report," he said. His voice calm despite the tension building in his chest. Lieutenant Hana Park's fingers flew across her console, her face growing pale as data scrolled past her eyes. "Sir, we have a contact. But it doesn't make any sense. The computer says it's impossible." Daeho moved to stand behind her station, looking at the readings himself. The numbers were insane. The vessel was moving at speeds that simply could not exist. Their fastest warships could cross a solar system in 3 hours. This thing had crossed it in 8 minutes? Sensor malfunction? He asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir. I've run diagnostics 3 times. All systems are functioning normally." Hannah looked up at him, confusion clear in her eyes. "Commander, according to these readings, that ship is moving faster than anything we've ever encountered. Faster than our theoretical maximums for warp technology." Technician Jun Lee spun in his chair at the communications station. "Sir, I'm trying to hail them on all frequencies. Standard protocol, emergency channels, everything. No response at all." Daeho straightened, his mind racing through possibilities. A new weapon? An experimental drive system from one of the Empire's research divisions? But no, that made no sense. Any Imperial vessel would respond to their hails immediately. This was a military border station. No one ignored Sentinel Prime. "Get me a visual," he ordered. The main screen flickered and an image appeared. Daeho felt his breath catch. The ship was unlike anything in the Imperial database. It was sleek and dark, its hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible weapons ports, no engine exhausts, no markings of any kind. It was as if someone had cut a piece out of space itself and shaped it into a vessel. "Energy signature?" Daeho asked. "That's the strange part, sir," Hannah said, her voice uncertain. "There is no energy signature? Or rather, it keeps phasing in and out. 1 second it's there, clear as day. The next second it's gone completely. Not cloaked, not dampened, just gone." June turned from his console, his young face tight with worry. "Should I send a priority alert to command?" Daeho nodded slowly. "Yes, code yellow. Unknown vessel, unknown origin, displaying impossible capabilities. Include all our sensor data." As June began transmitting the report, Daeho continued to stare at the mysterious ship on the screen. It had stopped now, hanging perfectly still at the exact boundary line of Imperial space. Not 1 meter inside their territory, but right at the edge. As if it knew exactly where the border was. As if it was waiting distance? He asked. 200,000 kilometers and holding, Hana reported. "Sir, it's just sitting there. Right on the line." Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. This was deliberate. Whoever was piloting that ship knew they were being watched. They had made their approach at impossible speeds, demonstrating capabilities beyond anything the Empire possessed, and now they waited. It was a message. A very clear message. We can go anywhere we want. We can move faster than you can track. We're here because we choose to be. How long until the fleet can get here? Daeho asked. June checked his console. Admiral Choi's task force is the closest. Estimated arrival time is 4 hours, 17 minutes. 4 hours. A lot could happen in 4 hours. Daeho moved back to his command chair and sat down heavily. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders, waiting for him to tell them what to do. But what could he do? His station had defensive weapons, but nothing that could touch a ship that could phase in and out of their sensors at will. "Continue hailing on all channels," he said finally. "And keep running full sensor sweeps. I want to know everything about that ship. Every detail, no matter how small." The next 3 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The mysterious vessel didn't move. It simply hung there in space, dark and silent and impossible. Hana ran scan after scan, building up a database of information that seemed to contradict itself at every turn. The ship appeared to be 500 meters long, then 600, then 400. Its mass readings fluctuated wildly. Even its shape seemed to shift slightly when they weren't looking directly at it. June sent out messages in every known language in the Imperial database. Mathematical sequences, basic pictograms, even old Earth languages from the ancient archives. Nothing received a response. Deho watched and waited, drinking cup after cup of bitter coffee, his eyes never leaving the screen for more than a few seconds. He had fought pirates and border raiders. He had faced down smugglers and rebels. But this was different. This felt different. There was an intelligence behind that silent ship, and it was watching them just as carefully as they were watching it. When Admiral Choi's task force finally arrived, the space around Sentinel Prime filled with Imperial warships, 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and the massive bulk of the flagship, Dominion's Fist. It was an impressive show of force. Enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. The unknown ship did not react. Deho received the transmission from the Admiral moments later. Commander Kim, status report. No change, Admiral. The vessel remains at the border, unresponsive to all hails. We've attempted communication for over 3 hours with no result. There was a pause, and Deho could almost see the Admiral's face, calculating, considering. Understood. We're sending over a full tactical team and diplomatic envoy. Maintain current position and continue monitoring. And Commander? Yes, Admiral. Good work spotting this. Whatever that thing is, we need to know about it. Stay sharp. The transmission ended, and Deho allowed himself a small breath of relief. At least now the decision was above his pay grade. But as he looked back at the screen, at that dark and silent ship waiting at the edge of Imperial space, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Then, without warning, the ship moved. Not away, not back the way it had come, forward, slow and deliberate, crossing the boundary line into Imperial territory. 1 kilometer, then 2, then 5. It was no longer waiting. It was coming, and somewhere deep in his gut, Deho knew that the Empire had no idea what it was dealing with. Admiral Subin Choi stood on the bridge of Dominion's Fist, her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. 30 years in the Imperial Navy had taught her patience, but this situation was testing even her limits. The unknown vessel had moved exactly 10 kilometers into Imperial space and stopped again, as if drawing a line in the sand and daring them to respond. All weapons charged and ready. Admiral, her tactical officer reported. Subin nodded but said nothing. Beside her, Ambassador Hyan Kang shifted uncomfortably. The diplomat was clearly out of his element here, surrounded by military officers and weapon systems. But protocol demanded a diplomatic presence for first contact situations, and Hyan had been the closest envoy available. Admiral, perhaps we should attempt communication again before taking any aggressive action, Hyan suggested, his voice careful and measured. We've been trying to communicate for hours, Ambassador. It hasn't responded to anything. Then perhaps we're not trying the right approach. Subin turned to look at him, one eyebrow raised. What do you suggest? Before Hyan could answer, a woman in a white research uniform stepped forward from the back of the bridge. Dr. Minji Yoon was small and quiet, but her reputation preceded her. She was the Empire's leading expert in xenolinguistics and first contact protocols. Subin had requested her presence specifically for this situation. Admiral, Ambassador, if I may, Minji said softly. We've been transmitting language and standard hailing frequencies. But what if this species doesn't use language the way we do? What if they communicate differently? What are you proposing, Doctor? Subin asked. Minji moved to a console and began inputting commands. Mathematics is universal. Physics is universal. Let me try something different. A sequence of prime numbers followed by basic physical constants. The speed of light, Planck's constant, the gravitational constant. If there's intelligence aboard that vessel, they'll recognize these. Subin considered for a moment, then nodded. Do it, The transmission went out, a series of pure mathematical concepts encoded in electromagnetic pulses. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The bridge crew waited in tense silence, watching the dark ship on their screens. Then the impossible vessel began to transmit back. "We're receiving a response." The communications officer called out, his voice filled with excitement. "It's the same mathematical sequence, but they've corrected two of our constants. Our measurements were off by 0.003%. A ripple of surprise went through the bridge crew. Whoever was aboard that ship not only understood their transmission, but had more accurate measurements than the Empire's best scientists. "They're sending more," the officer continued. "Coordinates. A location in neutral space, exactly midway between our current position and the border." Minji's face lit up with a smile. "They want to meet." "They're suggesting a neutral location, showing they understand the concept of boundaries and mutual territory." Hyan looked relieved. "This is good. This is very good. We can work with this." But Subin was less convinced. "It's also tactical. They're dictating terms. They choose the meeting point. They control the variables." She paused, thinking. "But we don't have much choice. If we refuse, we look aggressive. If we accept, we at least get answers." "I'll prepare a diplomatic shuttle," Hyan said immediately. "With a full military escort?" Subin added firmly. "I'm not sending our people out there unprotected." "That might be seen as hostile," Hyan protested. "And sending a defenseless shuttle might be seen as foolish." "We'll compromise. A small escort, clearly defensive, not aggressive. 4 fighters, enough to provide protection, but not enough to be threatening." Hyan nodded reluctantly. "I'll need a pilot I can trust. Someone with military experience, but also the temperament for a diplomatic mission." Subin didn't hesitate. "Commander Kim from Sentinel Prime. He was the first to spot this vessel. He deserves to see this through. Dr. Yoon will accompany you for communication purposes." Within an hour, the diplomatic shuttle launched from Sentinel Prime with Commander Daeho at the controls. Ambassador Haeun sat in the passenger section, reviewing his notes and preparing for every possible scenario. Dr. Minji was at a small workstation, her equipment ready to analyze any form of communication the unknown vessel might attempt. The 4 escort fighters maintained a respectful distance as they approached the coordinates. Through the shuttle's viewport, the mysterious ship grew larger and larger. Daeho had thought it looked big on the sensors, but seeing it up close was something else entirely. It dwarfed their shuttle like a whale next to a minnow. "By the stars," Hyan whispered, pressing his face to the viewport. "It must be 2 kilometers long. Maybe more." "Sensors still can't get a solid reading," Minji reported, her voice filled with scientific fascination. "The hull seems to be absorbing or deflecting our scans. I've never seen materials like this." Daeho kept his hand steady on the controls, his pilot's instincts keeping the shuttle on a smooth, non-threatening approach vector. "They're not targeting us. No weapons lock, no aggressive posture. That's something." As they drew closer, a section of the massive ship's hull began to open. Not with visible doors or hatches, but as if the hull itself was simply flowing apart like liquid metal. A docking port revealed itself, illuminated from within by a soft white light. "They're inviting us in?" Minji said, her voice barely above a whisper. Hyan straightened his formal diplomatic robes, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. "Well, we came here to meet them. Commander Kim, take us in." Daeho took a deep breath and guided the shuttle toward the opening. The escort fighters held position outside, unable to follow. As they crossed the threshold into the unknown vessel, Daeho felt a strange sensation wash over him, like passing through a curtain of static electricity. Then they were inside, and the hull flowed closed behind them. The docking bay was enormous and pristine, lit by that same soft white light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. As the shuttle settled onto the deck, Daeho saw something that made his blood run cold. Figures were approaching the shuttle. Humanoid figures, walking upright on 2 legs. As they came closer and the light hit them more clearly, Deho felt his world tilt on its axis. They were human. Not alien, not strange, not other. They were human, wearing uniforms that looked almost familiar, speaking into communication devices, moving with the practiced efficiency of a military crew. They looked like they could have walked off any Imperial vessel, except for one detail: the symbols on their uniforms, the writing on the walls. None of it was Vren Imperial standard, and on the shoulder of each uniform was a patch, showing a blue and green planet with a single moon, Earth, the ancient homeworld. The planet that had been lost to the Empire for over 400 years, isolated by a spatial anomaly that made the region unreachable. Dr. Minji's voice trembled as she spoke. That's not possible. Earth was cut off. There's no way they could have reached us. No way they could have developed this kind of technology in isolation. But as the airlock cycled and the shuttle door opened, as they stepped out onto the deck of this impossible ship and were greeted by humans who should not exist, Deho realized that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was about to change. A tall man in a captain's uniform stepped forward, a welcoming smile on his face. "Welcome aboard the Horizon's Call," he said in perfect Vrin standard language. "My name is Captain Ji Woo Han of the Earth Alliance. We have a lot to talk about." The conference room aboard the Horizon's Call was unlike anything Deho had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of a material that shifted between solid metal and transparent display screens. Right now, they showed images of space, making it feel like they were sitting in a bubble floating among the stars. It was beautiful and unsettling at the same time. Captain Ji Woo Han sat across from them, flanked by two of his crew. On his left was a man who had introduced himself as Engineer Taeyong Ko, his uniform marked with technical insignia. On his right sat Dr. Seyan Nam, a woman with kind eyes and a datapad filled with information that Deho suspected would change everything. Ambassador Hein cleared his throat, trying to maintain diplomatic composure despite his obvious shock. "Captain Han, forgive my directness, but we need to understand. Earth was cut off from this region of space over 400 years ago. How are you here? How is any of this possible?" Jiwoo smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "You're right that Earth was isolated, but isolated doesn't mean stopped. While you and your people continued on your path, we continued on ours. 400 years is a long time, Ambassador. Long enough for humanity to change, to grow, to advance. But this ship," Deho said, unable to contain himself, "the speed we detected, the way it phases in and out of our sensors, that's beyond anything we've achieved, beyond anything we've even theorized." Taeyong leaned forward, and Deho could see the excitement of an engineer eager to share his work. "That's because you're still thinking of space travel in 3 dimensions. What if I told you that space has more than 3 dimensions? What if you could fold those extra dimensions and step through them?" Dr. Minji's eyes went wide. "A phase shift drive? You're moving through dimensional folds." "Exactly." Taeyong beamed. "We don't push through space. We step around it. That's why your sensors can't track us properly. We're not always fully in your dimensional space. We flicker in and out, using the folds to move faster than anything bound to normal space-time." "That would require immense power," Minji said, her scientific mind racing, "and computational abilities far beyond our current systems." "It does," Taeyang agreed. "And we have both. Earth didn't sit still for 4 centuries. We grew, we learned. We became something more." Hyen shifted uncomfortably. "This is all fascinating, but why are you here? Why reveal yourselves now? Why come to the Vrin Empire?" The room fell silent. Guwu's smile faded, and Seyon looked down at her datapad with an expression that made Deho's stomach tighten. Whatever they were about to hear, it wasn't good news. "Because we had to," Wu said quietly. "Because we've been watching and we've seen what the Vrin Empire really is. What it really does." "I don't understand," Hyen said, his voice sharp. "The Vrin Empire is a force for peace and stability. We've brought dozens of species into prosperity, into civilization. Yan looked up and Deho saw anger flash in her eyes. You've conquered them. You've erased their cultures, suppressed their histories, and forced them to become Vrin. That's not integration, Ambassador. That's genocide. Cultural genocide. Hyan stood up abruptly, his face flushed. That's not true. That's propaganda, is it? Yan touched her datapad, and the walls of the conference room changed. Images appeared, documents, video footage. We've been monitoring the Empire for 20 years. We've visited the refugee colonies, the survivors who escaped your expansion. We've seen the records you've buried, the histories you've erased. The images showed things that made Deho feel sick. Species he recognized, species that were now integrated into the Empire, shown in their original forms before contact. Then footage of Imperial forces arriving. Not peacefully, not diplomatically, with weapons and threats and ultimatums. Comply or be destroyed. This is the Kalish people, Yan continued, her voice steady but filled with suppressed emotion. 300 million souls with their own rich culture and history. The Empire arrived 50 years ago. Today there are fewer than 10 million Kalish left, and they've all been integrated. Their language is banned. Their art is forbidden. Their history is being rewritten to show them as primitive savages who needed Imperial guidance. That's not how it happened, Hyan protested weakly. But Deho could see the doubt in his eyes. More images appeared. More species. More stories of conquest dressed up as integration. More lies exposed. Deho found his voice, though it came out rough. The Myron incident. 10 years ago. I was there. We were told they attacked first. That we responded in self-defense. Yan pulled up footage that Deho had never seen. Imperial ships approaching a peaceful Myron colony. Planting weapons. Staging an attack on themselves. Then using that staged attack as justification for a full military response. You were lied to, Commander, Wu said gently. The Myron never attacked. The Empire needed a reason to take their system. So they created one. Deho sat back in his chair, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. He remembered that day. Remembered the rage he'd felt at the Myron for their supposed attack. Remembered leading his squadron against their defenses. He'd killed people that day. People who were defending their homes from an invasion based on lies. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why would the Empire do this? Resources, territory, power. Yuwu's voice was sad. The same reasons empires have always expanded. The Vrin aren't evil, Commander. They're not monsters. They're just people who've been taught to believe their way is the only way. That their culture is superior. That the galaxy is better off under their control. Minji spoke up, her scientific curiosity fighting with her growing horror. But if you've known about this for 20 years, why wait until now? Why not reveal this information sooner? Because we weren't sure, Yan said. We had to verify everything. We had to make sure we weren't becoming the very thing we opposed. We sent explorers, researchers, observers. We listened and watched and documented. And then we had to make a choice. What choice? Hyan asked. Ji Wu stood and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at the stars. Whether to interfere? Earth has a policy of non-interference with developing civilizations. We learned that lesson the hard way in our own history. But we also learned that sometimes silence is the same as approval. Sometimes watching evil happen and doing nothing makes you complicit. He turned back to face them. The Vrin Empire stands at a crossroads. In 5 years, according to our projections, you'll reach the border of the Keswick Commonwealth. The Keswick are peaceful, technologically advanced, and have done nothing to threaten the Empire. But they sit on 3 systems rich in rare elements that the Empire wants. And let me guess, Deho said bitterly. The Empire will find a reason to attack them. They already have the false flag operation planned, Yan confirmed. We intercepted the preliminary orders 3 months ago. The Keswick don't know what's coming. They trust that the Empire's diplomatic overtures are genuine. So you came to warn us, Minji said. To try to stop it before it happens. We came to give you a choice, Zhiwu corrected. We can't force the Empire to change. We won't invade or conquer or impose our will. But we can show you the truth. We can offer you evidence. We can give you the chance to choose a different path. Hyen sank back into his chair, looking decades older than he had an hour ago. And if the Empire refuses? If they reject this evidence and continue as they are? Gyuwu's face was grave. Then we'll do what we can to protect the Keswick and any other species threatened by imperial expansion. We have the technology. We have the resources. And we have the will. We don't want war, Ambassador. But we won't stand by and watch genocide happen when we have the power to prevent it. The weight of those words hung in the air. Daeho looked at his companions and saw his own shock and confusion reflected in their faces. Everything they believed, everything they'd fought for, was being called into question. And the worst part was that the evidence was right there in front of them, undeniable and damning. What do you want from us? Daeho finally asked. Take this information back to your leadership. Share it, let them make the choice. Will the Vryn Empire continue down this path, or will it find the courage to change? Jiwu's expression softened. We're offering help, Commander, technology, knowledge, partnership, but only if the Empire is willing to change. Only if it's willing to be better. As they prepared to return to their shuttle, as the full weight of what they'd learned pressed down on them, Daeho couldn't help but wonder, what would the Empire choose? And more importantly, what would he choose when the time came? The chamber of the High Council was a place of cold marble and colder politics. High Chancellor Wu Jinru sat at the elevated central seat, his face carved from stone as he listened to Ambassador Hyen's report. Around the circular room, other council members sat in their designated places, their expressions ranging from shock to anger to careful neutrality. General Yunji Song stood at the military station, her uniform crisp and her posture rigid. Daeho recognized her type immediately, a true believer. Someone who saw the Empire as the only light in a dark galaxy, who would never question orders or admit to doubt. Let me understand this correctly, Wu Jin said, his voice cutting through the chamber like ice. These humans from Earth claim to have evidence of imperial wrongdoing, evidence they conveniently discovered after developing technology that surpasses our own. It's not just claims, Chancellor, Hyen said, his voice strained. He'd barely slept since returning from the Horizons call. They have footage, documents, testimony from survivors. I've reviewed much of it myself. It's detailed and credible. Or expertly fabricated, General Song interjected. This is clearly a psychological operation designed to weaken our resolve. They show us propaganda, make us doubt ourselves, and while we're busy questioning our own history, they prepare to strike. With respect, General, if they wanted to strike, they could have done so already, Daeho said. He knew he was speaking out of turn, that a mere commander had no place in these discussions, but he couldn't stay silent. Their ship moved through our defenses like they didn't exist. If this was an attack, we'd already be defeated. Song's eyes flashed with anger. So your solution is to surrender? To accept their narrative without question? My solution is to investigate, Daeho shot back. To verify their claims before we dismiss them or, worse, attack them. Enough, Wu Jin said, raising one hand. The room fell silent immediately. The data files these humans provided have been classified at the highest level. No one outside this chamber is to access them. Is that understood? Daeho felt his stomach drop. Chancellor, if the information is true, don't we have an obligation to... We have an obligation to protect the Empire from destabilization, Wu Jin interrupted coldly. Whether these allegations are true or false is irrelevant if releasing them causes panic and undermines confidence in our institutions. Irrelevant? Minji's voice was small but clear. She'd been silent until now, but Daeho could see she'd reached her limit. Chancellor, we're talking about cultural genocide, about billions of lives affected by policies based on lies. How is that irrelevant? Dr. Yoon, Wu Jin said, his tone dropping to dangerous levels. You are a scientist, not a politician. You would do well to remember that, General Song stepped forward. Chancellor, I recommend we take immediate military action against this Earth vessel. It represents a clear threat to Imperial security. With your permission, I can mobilize the entire border fleet and eliminate this problem before it grows. You want to attack them? Hyun looked horrified. That would be suicide, not to mention morally unconscionable. It would be defending our people from a hostile power that's already engaged in information warfare against us. While the council argued, Daeho felt something hard and cold settle in his chest. He'd come here hoping for honest discussion, for a genuine attempt to grapple with the terrible truths they'd learned. Instead, he was watching politicians and generals play games of power while people's lives hung in the balance. He thought about the footage he'd seen, the Myran, the Kalash, dozens of other species. He thought about all the times he'd followed orders without question, all the times he'd trusted that the Empire was acting righteously. How much blood was on his hands? How many of those deaths had been based on lies? Quietly, while the council continued to debate, Daeho slipped one hand into his pocket and felt the small data chip hidden there. Before leaving the Horizon's call, Seiyun had pressed it into his hand with a whispered message, just in case they don't listen. The meeting concluded with a decision that surprised no one. The evidence would remain classified. The humans would be monitored but not engaged. And life in the Empire would continue exactly as it had before. As if truth could be buried by committee vote. As they filed out of the chamber, Lieutenant Hannah fell into step beside Daeho. She waited until they were alone in the corridor before speaking. You copied the files, didn't you? Daeho didn't bother denying it. Yes, good. She pulled out her own data chip. So did I, and so did Dr. Yoon. We could be arrested for this. Executed for treason, I know. Hannah's voice was steady. But I've been doing my own research since we got back. I accessed old files, things from before I joined the military. Do you know what I found? Daeho waited. My grandmother. She was Kalash. My family never talks about it because having integrated species in your bloodline is considered shameful. But I found her records. Her real name was unpronounceable, so they made her take a Vryn name. They made her forget her language, her culture, everything she was. They told her it was for her own good, for her children's future. Hannah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She killed herself when I was 5. I never understood why. Now I do. They walked in silence for a moment, the weight of their decision pressing down on both of them. Then Hannah spoke again. June is with us. He's already started making copies to distribute through secure channels. And there are others, more than you'd think. People who've had doubts, who've seen things that didn't add up, who were just waiting for proof. This is going to tear the Empire apart, Daeho said. Maybe it needs to be torn apart. Meanwhile, in a small apartment in the lower levels of the capital city, a man named Young-Soo Beek sat in front of a dozen screens. Young-Soo had spent the last 10 years building a resistance network, connecting dissidents, integrated species who remembered their true heritage, and citizens who'd begun to question the official narratives. It was dangerous work. People disappeared for less. His secure terminal chimed with an incoming message. The encryption was military grade, which meant it came from someone inside the system. Young-Soo opened it carefully, always wary of traps. What he saw made his breath catch. Files, thousands of them. Video footage, documents, testimonies. Everything he'd been searching for, everything he'd needed to prove what the Empire really was. And a message. From friends inside, distribute widely. The truth can't be buried anymore. Young-Soo's hands shook as he began uploading the files to his network. Within hours, they would spread across 100 worlds. Within days, millions would see them. The Empire's carefully constructed lies were about to crumble. Back at Sentinel Prime, Admiral Choi sat alone in her ready room, watching the same footage for the 3rd time. She'd served the Empire for 30 years. She'd believed in its mission, its purpose, its righteousness. Now, watching Imperial forces stage a false flag attack on the Myran colony, she felt everything she'd believed crack and shattered. Her terminal showed incoming orders from General Song. The border fleet was being mobilized. In 72 hours, they would attack the Horizon's call with overwhelming force. Song was convinced it was a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could spread its poison further. Su-Bin looked at the orders and then at the footage still playing on her screen. Then she made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She opened a secure channel, one that would be very difficult to trace, and sent a message to a very specific location. Captain Jiwahan received the message aboard the Horizons. Call and read it 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he called his senior staff to the bridge. "We have 72 hours, he told them. "The Empire is going to attack in force. General Song is overriding the council and launching a preemptive strike. Do we run?" Taeyang asked. "We could," Wu admitted. "We're faster than anything they have. But running would prove General Song right. It would make us look like the threat she claims we are. So what do we do?" Wu looked at his crew, at the people who trusted him enough to volunteer for this dangerous mission. "We stand our ground. We don't fire first. We don't attack. But we don't run either. We show them that we're not afraid, that we believe in what we're doing enough to risk everything for it." "That's either very brave or very stupid," Se-Yan said. "Sometimes they're the same thing," Go smiled grimly. "And we let them know that we're offering asylum. Anyone who wants to leave the Empire, anyone who can't stomach the lies anymore, we'll take them, we'll protect them." As word spread through secret channels and resistance networks, as the files continued to multiply and spread across the Empire's communication systems, as the truth began its inevitable march into the light, 2 forces prepared for a confrontation that would decide the future of the Vrin Empire. One force believed in maintaining control at any cost. The other believed in truth and the courage to change. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn which belief was stronger. The Imperial fleet emerged from warp space like an iron wall. 47 warships, the largest battle group assembled in 15 years, all focused on one target. The Horizon's call hung motionless in space, making no attempt to flee. Its dark hull reflecting the light of distant stars. General Yunji Song stood on the bridge of her flagship. The Righteous Dawn, her eyes fixed on the Earth vessel with cold determination. "All ships, battle formation. Charge weapons. Prepare to fire on my command." Across the fleet, weapon systems powered up. Enough firepower to glass a planet, all aimed at a single ship that had done nothing but tell an uncomfortable truth. On the Horizon's call, Captain Jiwahan watched the display screens with an expression of calm that he didn't entirely feel. His crew was at their stations, ready but not aggressive. No weapons charged. No shields at maximum. They were making a statement with their very stillness. "Captain, we're being hailed," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." General Song's face appeared on the screen, her expression hard. "Earth vessel, you have violated Imperial space and engaged in hostile information warfare against the Vrin Empire. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." General Song, Zhu replied calmly. "We've violated no laws and engaged in no warfare. We've simply shared information that your own people deserve to know. Information that's verifiably true. Propaganda and lies designed to undermine our civilization. If it's lies, then investigate. Prove us wrong. But you can't, can you? Because it's all true, and you know it." Song's face flushed with anger. "You have 30 seconds to comply. After that, we will open fire. Then you'll be firing on an unarmed vessel that's made no threatening moves. Every sensor in this region will record it. Every nearby ship will see it. You'll prove everything we said about the Empire with your own actions. You think I care about appearances?" "You think..." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Not from Jiwoo's end?" Someone else had interrupted. "General Song, this is Admiral Choi. Stand down immediately." "That's a direct order." On the Righteous Dawn, Song spun to face her communications officer. "How did she get on this channel?" "She overrode your encryption, General. The entire fleet is hearing this." Subin's voice continued, calm but firm. "General, you're about to start a war based on fear and lies. I've reviewed the evidence. I've verified the sources. What the humans claim is true. We need to face that truth, not bury it with violence. Admiral, you're relieved of command pending an inquiry into your loyalty, Song snapped. You don't have the authority to relieve me, General. And I'm not alone in this. Across the fleet, ship after ship began to broadcast their support for Admiral Troy, captains who'd reviewed the leaked files, who'd seen the evidence, who'd made their own choices about what the Empire should be. Within minutes, more than half the fleet had declared they would not fire on the Horizon's call. Song stared at her displays in disbelief as her perfect battle formation crumbled. This is mutiny. This is treason. This is conscience, Subin replied. Something you should try finding. Back on Sentinel Prime, Daeho watched the standoff unfold on his screens while coordinating what he'd started calling the Exodus. Shuttles and small ships were arriving at an impossible rate, carrying people who'd decided they couldn't stay in the Empire anymore. Scientists like Minji who couldn't work for a system built on lies, soldiers like Hana who couldn't fight for a cause they no longer believed in, and thousands of integrated species who'd maintained their true identities in secret, waiting for a chance to be free. Commander, we've got another 30 ships inbound, June reported, and we're getting messages from 6 other systems. They want to know if the asylum offer is real. Tell them it's real, Daeho said. Tell them we'll protect everyone who wants to leave. On the capital world, Youngsu's resistance network had emerged from the shadows. What had begun as secret distribution of files had exploded into massive public demonstrations. Millions of citizens filled the streets, many of them integrated species who'd been forced to hide their true heritage. All of them demanding answers, demanding change, demanding justice. In the High Council chamber, Chancellor Wu Jin sat alone, watching his carefully controlled empire fall apart on every screen. The files were everywhere now. The truth was out, and the people were choosing, one by one, what kind of society they wanted to live in. His terminal chimed with an incoming message. It was from his daughter, whom he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Her message was short. I've seen the evidence. I'm leaving for the human ship. I can't be part of this anymore. I'm sorry, Father. I hope someday you'll understand. Urjin's hand trembled as he closed the message. How many others were making the same choice? How many families were being torn apart? And whose fault was it really? In orbit, General Song made her final decision. Ships that remain loyal to me target the Earth vessel. Prepare to fire. Ships that have turned traitor, you have 30 seconds to stand aside or you'll be fired upon as well. Unji, don't do this, Subin's voice pleaded. It's over. The truth is out. Violence won't change that. It will send a message. It will show that the Empire is strong, that we don't bow to threats or propaganda. It will show that we're exactly what they said we are. Tyrants who destroy what they can't control. Song ignored her and gave the order. All loyal ships fire. 7 warships opened fire on the Horizon's call. Plasma beams and missiles streaked through space toward the dark vessel. And then something happened that made every person watching hold their breath. The Horizon's call didn't move. It didn't dodge. It didn't activate weapons. The hull simply rippled like water, and every single weapon passed through it as if it wasn't there. The ship phased out of normal spacetime for precisely the duration of the attack, then phased back in, completely undamaged. Again, Song screamed. Fire again. The 7 ships fired a second volley. The result was exactly the same. The Earth vessel flickered like a ghost and returned untouched. It was a perfect demonstration of the technological gap between them. The Empire's most powerful weapons couldn't even scratch this ship. General Song, Jiwoo's voice came over every ship's communications simultaneously, calm and almost sad. We didn't come here to fight you. We came to offer help, to offer a better path. But if you insist on violence, know this, you cannot hurt us, but we could hurt you. We could destroy your entire fleet in minutes if we wanted to. We won't, because that's not who we are. But think about what that means. Think about the kind of power we're choosing not to use. He paused, letting his words sink in. The people of the Vrin Empire deserve better than leaders who respond to truth with violence. They deserve leaders who have the courage to change, to admit mistakes, to be better. Are you that kind of leader, General? Or are you just another tyrant who can't see past your own pride? Song's face on the screens was twisted with rage and something else. Fear, the realization that she'd already lost. That the empire she dedicated her life to defending was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. General Song, you're relieved of command. Security is escorting you to the brig. The voice belonged to her own first officer, a man who'd served under her for 8 years. This fleet will not fire on unarmed civilians, and we will not follow a commander who's lost perspective. Subin took command of the fleet and immediately opened communications with the Horizon's call. Captain Han, on behalf of the Vrin people, I apologize. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of mistakes to fix. If your offer of assistance is still open, we'd like to accept. Who smiled? It's open, Admiral, and we'll help however we can. But the work has to be yours. We can provide technology, knowledge, support, but the change has to come from within. Over the next 6 months, the Vrin Empire transformed. It was painful, messy, and far from perfect. Chancellor Wu Jin resigned, replaced by a coalition government that included representatives from all the integrated species. General Song faced trial for her attempted coup, as did several other high-ranking officials who'd been complicit in the Empire's worst actions. Young Su's resistance network became a political party focused on restorative justice and cultural preservation. They worked with the human advisors to create programs that would help integrated species reclaim their lost heritage while building a new, truly inclusive society. Daeho accepted a position on the Joint Human-Vrin Commission, working to rebuild trust and prevent future atrocities. He spent his days mediating disputes, facilitating cultural exchanges, and trying to make amends for the things he'd done in ignorance. Hannah discovered distant relatives among the Kalish people and began learning the language her grandmother had been forced to forget. She documented other family stories, creating a living archive of what had been nearly lost. Mingji worked with Earth scientists to advance Vrin technology ethically, always keeping in mind the lessons they'd learned about power and responsibility. The Keswick Commonwealth, warned of the false flag operation that had been planned against them, agreed to peaceful relations with the reformed Vrin government. Their first joint project was a memorial to all the species that had been harmed by the Empire's expansion, a reminder that would stand for generations.